Hello, first period. I am, unfortunately, proctoring the access test. So once again, we are asynchronous, but this video is to help you tackle today's classwork. So let's get started. All right, so you are going to right now do the do now, which is to complete the attendance question. Open today's classwork document. Today is February 2nd. Open up that document, and you are completing this do now in that document. So take about 10 minutes, pause the video right here, take about 10 minutes to answer those questions as best you can. All right, so that was the do now. You should have finished it. I hope you actually paused. We are about to review that do now and go over some objectives and announcements. Then we are going to do an exit ticket based on the work that we are going to go over from the do now. Don't get freaked out by the exit ticket. Just do your best on it. This is a brand new skill that we're learning. So you'll have plenty of time to correct your answers in future classes. And then finally, the last little portion of class is going to be some your asynchronous work. I mean, this is an asynchronous day, so you're answering questions to prepare for Thursday's guided discussion. We are having a discussion about Chapter 2 of The Bluest Eye. You're going to answer some questions to get ready for that. There's a separate video to help you answer those questions in case you're having trouble with them. Okay, so our objectives: prepare for Thursday's guided discussion on Morrison's use of setting and structure to make social commentary by answering questions about her use of structure and setting in Chapter 2. And we will be able to revise sentences to ensure transition words, phrases, and sentences are used effectively to connect information and ideas. This is an SAT skill. We're going to go over why that's important. And your homework, those guided discussion questions must be complete by Thursday. So those questions, so basically you need to complete this document, today's classwork document, up to where it says stop. So you should have that first 2 pages done before our lesson on Thursday. But before we get there, some announcements. We're going to be having a quiz on transition words next class, like those words we've been talking about, like however, therefore, moreover, furthermore, similarly, all those kinds of words. We're having a quiz on those words next class. Also, next class, we'll be having that guided discussion on the questions that you're going to answer today. So again, come ready to talk out loud. Access testing is this week. You and your parents should have received communication from Mr. Royal about the schedule if you need to take the access test. If you think you're supposed to take the test and you didn't get any communication about it, make sure you contact the front office. Late work policy. Just a reminder, I will grade exit tickets and assessments through the end of the unit. Classwork, if it's over a week late, I'm not going to grade it. It's just too much. Also, you should have a copy of The Bluest Eye by now, so make sure you get a copy if you haven't yet. All right, so we took the SAT, right? It's a standardized test. We hate those. I don't love giving them. I don't think they are, a full measure of intelligence. However, we live in a society and our society has decided that this test is important for various reasons. So it is a standardized test that a lot of colleges require in order to apply to that college. All Colorado high school students, that includes you, are also required to take the PSAT. The PSAT is the pre-SAT. It's like a, less intense version, basically, for 9th and 10th graders. In April, we will take that as kind of our spring standardized test to see how our school is performing. You already took a practice PSAT in January. We did that online. So based on that data, we kind of looked at the data. We said, okay, what are like kind of the 3 highest leverage, which means like, most important skills that we can work to improve before our April test. And the first one is what I said in the on that objective side, we'll be able to revise sentences to ensure transition words, phrases, and sentences are used effectively to connect information and ideas. So it's kind of similar to what we've been doing with just transition words, except this is expanding that into transition phrases and sentences. So we're going to get into what that looks like. So this is like what the questions that you answered for the do now are aligned to this skill. I keep having to move my webcam so that we can see all the text. So some key points. This is what you need to know about these questions. The SAT and the ACT, another standardized test you might take, will sometimes ask you to add a sentence that introduces this paragraph, or add a sentence that most effectively concludes this paragraph, or add a sentence that effectively transitions from the first paragraph to the second paragraph. So basically what this is asking is whether you understand the main idea of what you're reading, and can you choose the best option to sum up that main idea. So this is a cool skill because it's not just an SAT skill, right? You have to do this in your writing. When you are reading anything, you should be reading like editors, right? With an eye and your brain to like, does this actually sum up the main idea of this paragraph? Or like, why did the writer choose to use this particular word in this sentence instead of a different word, right? So reading this way and getting better at this on the SAT, I really do think will translate directly into doing this in your writing. And we're going to practice this in your writing as well. We're just going to start with these kind of multiple choice SAT questions, starting simpler. But yeah, reading like an editor will make you a clearer writer. So it is not just a standardized test skill. I promise this matters. So how to answer these questions. So you already answered a few of them for the do now, and we're going to go over those answers. But so the way that we want to answer these questions is basically you really need to sum up the central idea of whatever paragraph you are reading, right? So if you're being asked to introduce the paragraph, that means you need to sum up kind of like what the paragraph is about in that first sentence, right? Same thing with conclude. We want to sum up sort of the main idea of the paragraph in our concluding sentence. So we want to ask ourselves, what is this paragraph about? And what is the author saying about that topic? So kind of similar to with transitions, right? If we want to transition between paragraphs, just like transitioning between two ideas with a transition word, you need to understand kind of the main idea of both paragraphs and put something in that shows that relationship between them. A really important strategy for these questions is process of elimination. So we really want to sum up the main idea of the paragraph and eliminate options that don't relate to that central idea. Usually there will be one or two options that talk about kind of details in the paragraph. So they're like distractors, right? Because a detail is not the same thing as the main idea. So you really need to look out for those answer options that are trying to trick you by mentioning a detail that you see in the paragraph that is not the main idea. So let's go through those answers on the do now. So as we go over those questions, I want you to correct yourself. And also you're going to stamp in the classwork document your takeaway after we go over them. So question 1 on the do now. The answer was B. And the reason is that this whole paragraph kind of talks about how society views the breed, or the way the paragraph is written shows how society thinks that the breedloves are basically thinks of them as outcasts, right? That they are incapable of having a happy home because of the way their home looks, the way their home is described, right? The author says that they fester together. They point out that the store is abandoned, right? The furniture is incapable of producing memories to be cherished. So, right, we can eliminate for sure. Society views them as having a loving home. That's the opposite, right? We can get rid of that right off the bat. The Dick and Jane books were very popular in the 1940s. Again, kind of related because this is from those Dick and Jane books, that chapter heading, but not really the central idea, right? And then this other option, society values having nice furniture in one's home. It's like, that's again, related, right? Because this paragraph does talk about the furniture, but the main idea is really about the family. Society views their circumstances, the family circumstances, as incapable of fostering love. So that answer is B. Okay, question 2. So festering and abandon connote the idea that they are rotting away and are worthless. Morrison describes the furniture in their home as incapable of producing memories to be cherished. So we have 2 ideas that are basically bad about the Breedloves. So our answer is C, furthermore, because we're adding on another way that society views them as worthless or, not in the mainstream, basically. So we're adding on. Number 3, which of the following would best emphasize the main idea of the paragraph? So again, emphasize the main idea. We need to sum up that main idea. So we can get rid of A right off the bat because A is saying the opposite of what we know, right? So A says, views Piccola's family as similar to the family in the Dick and Jane books, right? It's the opposite. They view them as the opposite of the family in the Dick and Jane books. So between B, C, and D, our most specific answer that emphasizes that main idea of the paragraph is B. The omniscient narrator casts judgment upon Piccola's family, just as the rest of society casts judgment upon them, right? So C is kind of similar, but it's not as specific. It doesn't really emphasize that main idea about judgment and society judging them. And finally, all right, so I'm going to highlight that for you visual learners. So the answer was B. Finally, we are transitioning into the final paragraph. So this one talks about how society is judging them. This paragraph says Claudia is sympathetic toward Piccola and her family. So it's kind of opposites, right? So we want to go with B. A lot of B's as our answer. Because, however, shows contrast, right? So instead, similarly, all of the book's narration is judgmental towards the Breedloves. That's not true. We can eliminate that, right? Because the very next sentence says Claudia is sympathetic toward Piccola and her family. And again, we want to be really specific in transitioning into this idea. So the answer is B. Not all of the book's narration is judgmental toward the Breedloves because the very next sentence, talks about a sympathetic narrator that we have in the book. Okay, so right now, what I want you to do is stamp. So what do you need to do in order to introduce or conclude a paragraph effectively? And what do you need to do in order to transition between paragraphs? So we got some key points in the slides here. You can go back and look at that. You can think through what I just talked through, what we had to do to answer these questions, and stamp right now. Do that now. Pause. Stamp in your classwork document. Answer these 2 questions. Okay, hopefully you stamped. I will be looking for your stamps, so don't skip it. Okay, so we have gone through our do now. We've reviewed those do now questions. Your stamp should have said something like, sum up the main idea, right? Introduce, conclude. We need to sum up the main idea of that paragraph. Transition between paragraphs. We need to, again, consider the main ideas of both paragraphs and pick a word or a phrase that shows the correct relationship between them. So with those stamps in mind, we are going to do an exit ticket. It is linked in your classwork document. So this will feel challenging. This is a somewhat more challenging passage about a topic you may not be familiar with. All I want you to do is your best. We just learned this skill. You're going to have opportunities to correct this exit ticket in future classes, so please don't freak out about your grade. The passage and the questions are linked right here. And then you're going to enter your answers into this Google form. So both of those things are linked here. So go ahead and pause and complete the exit ticket now. Okay, last part here. So we did the exit ticket, and then we've got one more thing. So like I said, your homework that you need to finish for Thursday is these questions to prepare for Thursday's discussion. So it's just 3 questions. I want you to write at least, I'm going to say 2 complete sentences for each question. I'm adding that to the directions. So these questions ask about structure. They ask about the narrator of the chapter and how the narrator describes the Breedlove's home, right? How is the Breedlove's home characterized by this narrator that we have? And how does this characterization symbolize the family? So there is a separate video linked in your document to help kind of guide you through these questions and point you to some places in the book where you can look to help you answer them. Before you get there, I do want to go over one vocabulary word because it's important for answering these questions and thinking through what Morrison does in this chapter. So the vocabulary is connotations. You may have talked about this in Miss Augustinelli's class already. I'm not totally sure. So connotations are the meanings that words carry beyond just their literal definitions. So for example, describing someone as youthful is generally positive, right? Has a good positive connotation. He's very youthful. While saying someone is childish is negative, right? Oh, he's acting so childish. That's a negative connotation. So even though those words are similar, they have similar meanings, one has a positive and one has a negative connotation. So you can see more examples here on this slide, right? Slender has positive connotations. Thin, neutral. Skinny or like emaciated, that would be a negative connotation. So you got a couple more examples here. So as you are reading chapter 2 and answering these questions, I want you to think about the connotations of the words that the narrator uses to describe the Breedlove's house, right? So you already read this chapter, so you should be kind of familiar with, what goes on in it, but it's basically just the narrator describing the Breedlove's home. So I'm going to think through, how is this narrator describing this house? Is this narrator neutral, or is this narrator judging the house based on the words that they're using? So go ahead and answer those questions in your classwork document. Again, just 3 questions. And there is a video to help guide you through those questions if you need it. And again, those are due Thursday for homework so that we can have a really good discussion in class. Okay, that is all. I hope that you enjoyed this or at least tolerated it. And I will see you on Thursday, finally, at long last, after a week and a half of asynchronous lessons. I miss you guys. Can't wait to see you on Thursday and have a really good discussion about these questions.